You're watching Shortstop Television, covering lots of ground.
Hello, everyone. This is episode 2 of the Dugout. I'm here with a very special guest, the radio play-by-play announcer, Eric Nadel. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Carson. How are you?
I'm doing great. So let's get started. So I know you grew up in New York, in Brooklyn, specifically, and you were interested in the Brooklyn Dodgers. And was there something about Mel Allen or Red Barber that kind of stood out to you with the Yankees, or were you just not able to listen to the Brooklyn Dodgers when they moved to LA? So what was that all?
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers moved when I was 6,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't really started listening to games on the radio that I remember. We
Right.
attended some games and we watched games on TV. I don't really remember listening to Vin Scully, who was doing the Dodger games. And I do remember really well listening to Mel Allen and Red Barber. And what stood out to me most about Mel Allen was he was just super warm and friendly. And
Mm-hmm.
he really seemed like he was your buddy. And I really felt that he was a good guy, and I wanted to go to the game and sit with him. And that's really what attracted me to him the most, was just his sheer friendliness in his style.
So both of them were the first receivers of of the Ford C. Frick Award that you received in 2014. So what was it like to receive an award like that, that they were one of the first people to receive that award?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was surreal, to see that I am now considered in the same company as
Mhm.
guys like that. And some of the other announcers who I listened to growing up too, the Mets announcers, Bob
Mhm.
Murphy and Lindsey Nelson, have both won the Ford Frick Award too. And it's nuts, but I realized that just the way I grew up listening to those guys, people like you grew up listening to me. So
Mhm.
I pretty much served the same role for a lot of people in Texas that Mel Allen and Red Barber served for me.
Yeah. So do you still follow the Yankees or Dodgers?
No, I don't root for either of them. I actually do root for the Mets.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
when the Mets started, we became big Mets fans. We really
Mhm.
weren't Yankee fans.
Gotcha.
We listened to their games because they were the only team we had after the Dodgers and the Giants moved to California. But as
Mhm.
soon as the Mets came in 1962, we became Mets fans, and that was extremely painful for the first 7 years or so before they broke through in '69 and went from never having a winning record to winning the World Series.
So, you started calling hockey first, and football at Brown, and so you also did hockey in Michigan, OKC, and Dallas. So, do you still have love for hockey today, or has it shifted only to baseball? Or yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge hockey fan. I go to lots of Dallas Stars games.
Hmm.
They're my team now. I grew up rooting for the New York Rangers, but when the Dallas Stars came to Dallas, I became a huge Stars fan. I go to as many games as I can. I watch the games on TV. I love hockey. It's by far my favorite sport to watch. I follow the Cowboys somewhat, and I do follow the Mavericks, but not nearly as closely as I follow the Dallas Stars. Love
Hmm.
them.
So, when you were at Brown, when was kind of the moment that you realized, like, okay, this is something that I want to do and something that I want to take pretty seriously?
Well, I knew I wanted to do it from the time I was a little kid, and I found
Mhm.
out that Mel Allen was getting paid to go to Yankee Stadium and broadcast Yankee games. I became more determined to be a hockey announcer
Mhm.
when I was in high school and Marv Albert started doing the New York Ranger games on radio. And I really became a huge fan of Marv Albert and wanted to be like Marv Albert. And so I knew that that's what I wanted to do before I even went to college. I was fortunate in going to a school that had a really good radio station where
Mhm.
you learned from the students above you. So I entered and became the pre and post game guy on the hockey broadcast with a really good play-by-play announcer named Jim Shantz, and he taught me how to do play-by-play. And when he graduated at the end of my sophomore year, I took over the play-by-play chair, and I had been very well trained. And as soon as I actually got a chance to start doing play-by-play, people started telling me, "Hey, you're really good. You should think about doing this for a living." And I already was thinking about doing it for a living, constantly critiquing myself, going to practices and practicing doing play-by-play at scrimmages. I was very, very dedicated to becoming a professional hockey announcer. And then I just happened to get lucky, and I was in Dallas doing minor league hockey for the Dallas Blackhawks.
Mhm.
Texas Rangers were looking to hire a young announcer and gave me a chance to audition for the job.
Yeah, so you got hired by the Texas Rangers in 1979. You're on your what, 45th, 46th year and doing with the Texas Rangers?
It's the
So
47th, yeah.
47th, wow. So what was that shift like whenever going from hockey to baseball?
Yeah, it was really hard. They're probably the two most different sports to broadcast. In hockey, you have to memorize the names and numbers,
Hmm.
and then you just follow the puck. You don't really worry about how you're going to fill dead time.
Hmm.
And in baseball, it's just the opposite. The
Right. There's
ball.
no there's
Oh,
too much, almost too much dead time, I guess
yeah,
you
the ball's in play for about 15 minutes
right.
during a 2.5, 3 hour baseball game. So the whole key to baseball is being conversational and filling that dead time in an interesting manner, and then raising the level of excitement, as needed when things actually start happening. But what you do between pitches, to me, is what separates the really good baseball announcers from the others. It's how you
Hmm.
entertain the audience, inform the audience, and keep them engaged
Yeah.
when, for the most part, nothing's happening.
So, I remember in a interview you said that you were really happy that they added the pitch clock, because that took away some dead time, like you didn't have to think of some things. So, like, how was that kind of like, what was that kind of big shift? Like, was it easier to think of some things that you could talk about, or like, I mean, because there's not as much dead time there.
Yeah, you just don't need as much material. They basically took out 35 minutes of time when
Wow.
nothing was happening, which is 35 minutes of time that, my partner and I had to fill. And so now I don't have to prepare as much because a lot of the background information and stuff like that, we don't get a chance to use now that, there's 15 seconds between pitches, on the average instead of 25 or 30 seconds between pitches. It really has made the job much easier. And I don't think I'd still be working if they hadn't put in the pitch clock. The games had gotten so long and so boring,
Yeah.
and there was so much dead time that it really wasn't much fun anymore. And I've always said I'll do this job as long as it's fun and as long as I'm still doing it, to my standards.
Mhm.
And it had gotten past the point where it wasn't fun anymore. But when
Yeah.
they put the pitch clock in, I decided, well, let's stick around, see what it's like with the pitch clock. And it's been a complete game changer.
Mhm.
It's been fabulous.
So when you first started working with the Rangers, you got to work with the late and great Mark Holtz for about 13 years. So now obviously I don't remember that time, but yeah, I've heard y'all are a great duo together. What were those 13 years like?
Yeah, he was fantastic. He was one of the best baseball announcers who I've ever heard. He was as good as anyone in the dramatic moments, and he also had a very warm, engaging personality, kind of like
Mhm.
Mel Allen did, where people immediately fell in love with him just based on how happy he seemed to be there and how happy he seemed to be talking to the fans. And I learned a lot from him about that, about your personality being so much a part of the broadcast. And he also, it was very good for me because I was the number two announcer, and he
Mhm.
was really into the whole concept of a two-man broadcast, where the announcer didn't really work alone, but
Yeah.
you talked back and forth throughout the broadcast. He had a really good sense of humor, and we goofed around a lot. And my first year with him, 1982, we broadcast almost every spring training game. So
Mhm.
we got a lot of time together working games that didn't matter. So we could be funny and we could be goofy. And the people we were working for really liked that style. And they
Mhm.
encouraged us when the regular season started to keep doing it that way in kind of a lighthearted manner. And that turned out to be really good advice because the Rangers that year had a terrible season.
Mhm.
And it helped that we were, entertaining people by, being amusing, being funny, hopefully. And people just kind of got used to that. And for 13 years, we were able to do it. And, I'm really grateful, really blessed. We did a lot of really big games together. In Nolan Ryan's sixth and seventh no hitter, Kenny Rogers' perfect game, Nolan Ryan's 300th win, and his 5,000th strikeout. They all came when I was working with Mark Holtz.
Yeah, so you mentioned Nolan Ryan's 5,000 strikeout, and you got to work with Holtz, and so But I also heard in another interview that you didn't get to exactly call like that exact pitch. It was Holtz that was doing it. Were y'all switching off like with innings or like yeah? So
Yeah,
what?
I would do the middle innings, and actually that call was mine. That was the only one of the big calls that I
Oh.
got to do because it happened, in the fifth inning.
Hmm.
Whereas, the last out of a no-hitter is in the ninth inning, and so Mark
Right.
got to do that for Rogers' perfect game and for Nolan's two no-hitters. Mark got to do that. And any other dramatic, end of the game in the ninth inning, he got to call it. But I was lucky enough that the strikeout of Ricky Henderson for the
Hmm.
5,000 happened in the middle innings. So it was the first really big call that I got to make.
Wow, that's exciting. So you have some really super duper famous calls in the Texas Rangers world. So with your most famous being that ball is history whenever a home run is hit. So was that planned or like how did you come up with that when it first happened or how did that?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was it was kind of planned. I got hired in August of 1978 to start in 1979. So I
Hmm.
had a whole winter to prepare. I listened
Hmm.
to a lot of announcers' tapes during that time and thought it would be cool if I had my own home run call. Hadn't really come up with anything. And one night I was at a party and somebody got up to leave and said, "Okay, guys, I'm history."
Hmm.
And it just struck me, I'm history. That would be an interesting way of calling a home run. It's history. And then I just kind of morphed it into that ball is history. And the first time the Rangers hit a home run in a game I was calling, I used it and people liked it. So
Hmm.
I kept doing it. I've been doing it since 1979 when the Rangers hit a home run.
So another famous call that you had was recently in 2023 when the Rangers won the World Series. You said, "Ranger fans, you're not dreaming." So what was that call to you to see? In the 43 years that you had been doing it, or 44 years that you had been doing it at the time, to seeing three World Series appearances to them actually winning in 2023. So what was that kind of like? Was that also off the top of your head, or or excuse me, was that planned or was that off the top of your head or yeah.
Yeah, during the day, that day, the day of Game 5 of the World Series, with the Rangers leading 3 games to 1, I had this strong feeling all day. The Rangers are going to win the World Series tonight,
Mhm.
and I still couldn't believe it. I really felt like I was dreaming,
Mhm.
and it just dawned on me: if I feel like it's a dream, then Ranger fans are probably thinking that too, that this isn't for real; they're dreaming. So I
Right.
just decided at that point that if the Rangers won, I would say at some point, "You're not dreaming." And I
Mhm.
wrote it down on a little piece of notepaper. I stuck it in my wallet. And then as we went to the bottom of the ninth, after Marcus Semien hit a 2-run homer in the top of the ninth to make it pretty clear the Rangers were definitely going to win, I got out the piece of paper and I put it in front of me on my scorebook so that when the game ended, at some point, I would say, "Ranger fans, you're not dreaming."
Mhm.
And so I was able to work that in around whatever else came out of my mouth at that time, which was, not planned. But what was planned was for me to say, "You're not dreaming," at some point in the final call.
Yeah, so in your announcing career, you even made a appearance in The Rookie. So how did that come about?
Yeah, when they were filming The Rookie, the people who wrote the movie did not have a real good grasp on
Mhm.
baseball terminology. They also were not willing to pay royalties to all of the players who were involved in that game when Jim
Mhm.
Morris first came to the major leagues and pitched in Arlington against the Rangers. So they wanted to have some play-by-play in the broadcast, uh, but they didn't want to use the real play-by-play because they would have had to pay royalties to every single player whose name was mentioned.
Wow.
So instead of just using the broadcast that I had done that night, they had me fly to Austin and spend a day in a studio re-recording a lot of the
Oh,
calls without using players' names, which was pretty weird. So like
yeah.
a single to right field, instead of saying, you know, Zeal swings
Yeah.
and lines a single to right field, and Smith is on his way to third, and here's the throw by Crawford and the tag by Johnson, and he's safe. I had to leave out all the names and
Mm-hmm.
just say there's a swing and there's a single to right field and there's a throw to third and he's safe. And I did a whole bunch of calls like that after watching video of what had happened in the game. And that's what they used in the movie. The only player who they were willing to pay was Royce Clayton, because he actually struck out as the first batter that Jim Morris faced. And so that was the only player whose name I was allowed to mention. But it was a good deal. I rewrote a lot of the announcers' parts in the movie. There was also a part for a high school announcer, and
Mm-hmm.
all the verbiage was messed up. It wasn't what an announcer would sound like in
Yeah.
an actual baseball broadcast. So I rewrote all that stuff, and that was really cool because they had not agreed to pay me royalties. They were just paying me a flat fee.
Mm-hmm.
But because I rewrote some of the script, they actually gave me royalties, and I still
Wow.
get checks 4 times a year.
That's
Usually they're
awesome.
for about $10, but at the
Hey,
start,
$10 richer than you were.
they were pretty good. They were a few $100s a time when it all started, but it's still amusing to get a check in the mail for $10 4 times a year.
So, I know this has been a pretty quick interview. I didn't want to take up all your time. So, when the day comes that you have to put down the mic, what do you think, or what do you hope Ranger fans will remember as the voice of the Rangers?
Oh, that's a really good question. I hope they remember that, I worked for them, that I was honest, even though I was rooting for the Rangers. I tried to give them as accurate a picture as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'm the spokesman for the team, I never would have tried to mislead anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and that they got an accurate picture. And hopefully they came away with the feeling, that I was a good guy who they wanted to spend time with. And, that's the most important thing for me about a baseball announcer, is the way he connects with the fans,
Yeah.
as a human being. And hopefully, they have a good feeling about me, from the time they spent with me, even though I don't know exactly who they are. Hopefully I brought some joy into their lives.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time. It was really great honor to get to speak to you today. Yeah. So,
It's a pleasure, Carson. Thank you very much. Great
absolutely.
question.
Thank you.